She was the daughter of a cleaner, born in a small apartment in a busy city. The walls were thin, and the sounds of traffic and neighbors drifted through every room. Her mother worked long hours, cleaning offices and homes, coming back tired but always carrying a smile. They didn't have much, and some days it felt like the world had forgotten them. But the little girl always had a sparkle in her eyes. She was curious, always watching people, listening to sounds, and noticing things others ignored. Even though money was tight, her mother made sure there was warmth at home. She cooked simple meals, told stories from her childhood, and encouraged her daughter to dream, even if the dreams seemed too big for their small apartment. The girl loved music more than anything. She didn't have a piano at home, but she had a small old keyboard that had been donated to their community center. It was scratched and missing some keys, but to her, it was a treasure. She spent hours pressing the keys, learning the sounds and creating her own little tunes. Every time she played, it was like the world around her disappeared. The chaos of the city, the tiredness of her mother, even her own hunger, all faded, leaving only music. She had an ear for melodies that surprised everyone who heard her. She could listen to a song once and play it back, almost perfectly, on the keyboard. Sometimes, she would hum along, experimenting with her own variations. Her mother noticed but never pushed her too hard. She knew her daughter needed freedom to explore and let her passion grow naturally. Often, neighbors would stop by the apartment when they heard the soft notes drifting from the keyboard. They were amazed at how someone so young could create music that felt so full of life. Some would say she had a gift, but she never cared about being called talented. For her, playing music was pure joy. School was a different story. While other kids were worried about grades and sports, she was often daydreaming about music. She would sketch little notes on paper, drawing patterns that represented the melodies in her head. Teachers noticed she was quiet and thoughtful. She didn't speak much in class, but when it came to music lessons, even the smallest ones offered at school, her face lit up. She practiced diligently, sometimes during lunch breaks, sometimes after finishing homework. She learned to read simple notes quickly and began trying to play pieces that were far above her level, adjusting and learning on her own. One rainy afternoon, the community center organized a small music gathering. Children from different neighborhoods came to play instruments and show their skills. The girl begged her mother to let her go. Her mother hesitated at first, worried about safety and cost, but eventually, she agreed. The girl clutched the small bag with her keyboard notes and walked through puddles, excited and nervous. When she arrived, she saw other children with proper instruments, shining shoes, and neat uniforms. She felt a pang of self-doubt. Her old, slightly broken keyboard notes seemed so small compared to their grand instruments. But she took a deep breath and reminded herself why she was there. She loved music. That was enough. When her turn came, she stepped up quietly, placing her hands on the imaginary keys of the melody she had practiced countless times. The room fell silent. Then she began to play. The notes floated into the air, soft at first, then building with confidence. Everyone stopped what they were doing, surprised by the depth and clarity of her sound. The teachers, parents, and children were amazed that such delicate yet powerful music could come from someone so young and from such humble beginnings. For the first time, she felt recognized not for her background but for her heart and skill. The applause at the end was gentle but sincere, and she smiled, feeling warmth in her chest. After that day, her mother noticed a change in her daughter. She seemed lighter, more confident. Music became a way to escape not just from daily struggles, but also to explore new emotions and ideas. Sometimes, when her mother came home exhausted, she would find her daughter at the window, humming softly while looking out at the city lights. Her music was no longer just notes. It carried feelings, stories, and dreams. People began to talk about the girl in the neighborhood. Some neighbors suggested she take lessons at a proper music school, but her mother could barely afford the basic necessities, let alone expensive lessons. Still, she promised to help her daughter in any way she could. Sometimes they would save a little from her mother's wages to buy sheet music, or they would take the long bus ride to a community music workshop. Even without luxury, her talent grew. She found ways to learn by listening to old records, asking questions, and practicing endlessly. She became determined to make music her own, not because anyone told her she could, but because she loved it. Her life wasn't always easy. She struggled with the fact that many children could take lessons easily, go to music camps, or have instruments at home. She sometimes felt frustrated, but she never let it stop her. Every challenge became a lesson. If a page of music was difficult, she studied it until she could play it perfectly. If an instrument was broken or missing, she adapted, learning to adjust her touch and tone. She discovered that obstacles only made her stronger and more creative. By the time she was ready to leave elementary school, she was known in her neighborhood as the girl who played the piano like someone much older. Her story spread slowly, through neighbors, friends of friends, and teachers who recognized her determination. People admired her resilience and her love for music despite not having advantages others had. She never sought attention. She just wanted to play. But the world was starting to notice. Evenings were her favorite. After her mother had gone to sleep and the city sounds quieted down, she would sit by the small lamp in their apartment, keyboard on her lap or sheet music in front of her, and lose herself in melodies. Sometimes she would imagine performing for an audience, or playing with famous musicians she had only heard about in recordings. These dreams didn't feel far-fetched. In her mind, she could see herself on a stage, lights shining, fingers dancing on keys, people listening with awe. It wasn't arrogance. It was hope. It was belief in something beyond her small world. She began to notice that music could connect people. She played for her mother when she was tired, and her mother would smile, feeling relief and joy. She played for neighbors, who would stop by and linger in the hallways just to hear her. Music became a language that didn't need words, a way to share feelings and stories. Slowly, she realized that her gift could reach beyond her apartment, beyond her neighborhood, could touch anyone who listened. Even in moments of hardship, like days when food was scarce or bills needed paying, music gave her strength. It reminded her that her life wasn't defined by poverty or circumstance. She could create something beautiful, something lasting, with her own hands and heart. Every note was a small victory, a proof that she could rise above challenges. Her determination and talent grew quietly, like a flame protected from wind, ready to shine when the right moment came. This part of her life, full of small joys and quiet struggles, set the foundation for the incredible journey ahead. She was the cleaner's daughter, living in a modest apartment, but in her mind, she was already somewhere far beyond the walls around her. Music was her guide, her companion, and her dream. Every day she practiced, learned, and imagined. Little did she know, one day, her piano melodies would draw attention not just from her neighborhood, but from famous artists who would come running to hear more. For now, she was content to play, to explore, and to dream quietly, letting her passion grow like a secret garden waiting to bloom. As she grew older, her love for music became even stronger. She had moved past the small keyboard and now spent more time at the community center, where an old piano had been donated. It was not perfect, the keys were a little stiff and some notes did not sound as clear, but to her it was more than enough. Every afternoon, after school and finishing small chores at home, she would rush to the piano and lose herself in the melodies she created. No one had formally taught her. She had learned by watching, listening, and copying, but her imagination took her further than lessons ever could. She experimented with rhythms, played soft notes that seemed to whisper and then loud ones that made the room vibrate. Sometimes, she would close her eyes and imagine herself performing in front of hundreds of people, feeling the applause, and seeing the smiles of those who understood the music. Those moments were her escape and her motivation. Her family noticed the change in her. She became calmer and more confident. Even though they still faced struggles, her mother found joy in seeing her daughter's dedication and passion. They didn't have much money, but they had music, and it brought light to their small apartment. Her mother sometimes asked her to play for neighbors or friends who came to visit. At first, the girl was shy, but soon she realized how music could touch hearts. People would stop talking and listen, some closing their eyes, letting the melody carry them somewhere far from their worries. She also began to understand that talent alone was not enough. Discipline and patience mattered. She would practice for hours, repeating the same piece until it sounded perfect in her ears. If she made a mistake, she didn't give up. Instead, she tried again, figuring out how to make the note correct, how to make the melody flow. Slowly, her music became smoother and more expressive. Her friends at school began to notice. Some of them had been skeptical at first, thinking she was just a quiet girl with a small hobby. But when they heard her play, they could not believe it. Even children older than her would stop to listen. They admired her dedication and talent. Some tried to play music too, inspired by her, but no one could match the feeling she put into every note. She did not boast or compete. She simply played from her heart, and that made her unique. One day, a local music teacher visited her school to give a small demonstration. She watched closely, fascinated by the teacher's hands and the sounds that came from the piano. After the session, she approached quietly, showing the teacher what she had been practicing. The teacher was surprised at the girl's skill and her understanding of melodies. She encouraged her to keep practicing and suggested that she could perform at a small community concert. The girl felt a mix of excitement and nervousness. She had never performed in front of a larger group outside her apartment or the community center. But she also knew this was a chance she could not miss. In the weeks leading up to the community concert, she practiced even more. She would arrive at the center early and leave late, sometimes forgetting to eat or rest properly. Her mother would remind her gently to take care of herself, but she couldn't stop the girl from diving deeper into the music. She wanted to play perfectly, to let people hear what she felt inside. Every note she played was a reflection of her life, her struggles, her dreams, and her hope. The day of the concert arrived, and she wore the simplest clothes she had, feeling a little out of place among children who had shiny shoes and polished instruments. Her hands trembled slightly as she walked to the piano. The hall was quiet, and dozens of people were waiting, curious to hear the young performers. She took a deep breath and sat down. The first note she played was soft, almost hesitant, but soon it grew into a melody full of life and feeling. The audience was immediately drawn in. Parents, children, and even local musicians listened closely, amazed at the depth and emotion in her music. Her fingers moved quickly and gracefully, each note placed with care. She played a piece she had composed herself, weaving in small improvisations that made it sound fresh and unique. People exchanged surprised glances. They had expected a small performance from a child, but what they heard was extraordinary. After the performance, the applause was long and heartfelt. Some of the adults had tears in their eyes, moved by the purity of the music. The girl felt a warmth in her chest she had never felt before. She realized that her music had power. It could make people stop, listen, and feel. She understood then that music was not just a hobby or a dream. It was her voice, her way of speaking to the world. From that day on, people began to pay more attention to her. The community center invited her to play at other events. Neighbors told friends about the girl with the piano talent. Even a few local music teachers wanted to give her lessons or help her improve. Her mother was proud but cautious. She wanted her daughter to succeed, but she also wanted her to stay grounded, not let fame or attention take over the joy of playing. Despite the growing recognition, she stayed humble. She continued to practice at the community center, imagining herself in bigger halls, but never forgetting the small apartment and the simple joys that started her love for music. She knew that every great musician started somewhere, and her small beginnings were important. They reminded her of who she was and why she played. One afternoon, while practicing alone, she noticed a pattern in her compositions. She began to combine melodies she had learned from recordings with her own ideas, creating something entirely new. It was exciting and challenging, but she loved every moment. Music had become not just a passion but a part of her identity. It was how she expressed joy, sadness, hope, and wonder. It was her companion in lonely times and her celebration in happy moments. The girl also learned the value of patience. Talent alone could not bring recognition. She had to wait for the right opportunities and be ready when they arrived. She continued to play at local events, learning from every experience, improving, and experimenting. She became confident not just in her skill, but in her ability to touch people with her music. Slowly, a quiet reputation began to build, even though she still lived in the same small apartment with her hardworking mother. Her story began to reach beyond the neighborhood. A few people took notice online, recording her performances at community events and sharing them. Even though the recordings were simple, they carried her unique style and heart, and people were moved. Messages of encouragement and interest started to come in. She read them carefully, feeling a mixture of excitement and disbelief. She was still just a girl from a humble background, but the world was starting to see her talent. At home, her mother encouraged her to dream bigger, but also reminded her to stay true to herself. She continued to help with chores and household responsibilities, but she also allowed time for music, understanding that it was more than a hobby, it was a calling. Together, they dreamed of a future where the girl could play in bigger halls, meet musicians she admired, and share her melodies with people far beyond their small neighborhood. By the end of this period, she had become more than just a talented child. She was a young musician with heart, imagination, and determination. She had learned the value of hard work, patience, and humility. Most importantly, she had discovered that music was a language everyone could understand, a bridge that connected people regardless of their background. The girl from a humble apartment, the daughter of a cleaner, had begun to create a name for herself in the music world, quietly and passionately, one note at a time. Her journey was only beginning, but she was ready to face whatever came next, armed with her talent, her love for music, and the unwavering support of her mother. The opportunity came unexpectedly one afternoon. A renowned music school was visiting the city, and they had organized auditions for talented children from all neighborhoods. Flyers had been posted, and everyone who wanted to try had to register. When the girl saw the notice at the community center, her heart skipped a beat. She knew this could be the moment she had been waiting for, but fear and excitement tangled in her chest. Her mother encouraged her gently, reminding her that talent mattered more than appearances, and that she should simply share her music from the heart. On the day of the audition, she held her small bag close as they walked to the venue. The building was grand, much larger than any place she had been before. Shiny floors reflected the lights, and the walls were lined with pictures of famous musicians. She felt a little out of place, her simple dress contrasting with the polished appearances of other children and their parents. Her fingers fidgeted as she gripped the sheet music she had carried for days. But inside, she felt determination. She had practiced, imagined, and dreamed of this moment. She was ready. Inside the hall, the atmosphere was tense. Children tuned instruments that gleamed under the lights, and parents whispered encouragements. Some of the competitors had been taking lessons for years and looked confident. She could feel the weight of expectations pressing down, but she reminded herself that her music was her own, and it had always come from her heart. No matter what, she could play with honesty and feeling, and that was enough. When her name was called, she walked slowly to the piano. The keys were polished and smooth, reflecting the stage lights. She sat down, taking a deep breath, and closed her eyes for a brief moment. The room fell silent. Some of the adults exchanged glances, a little skeptical of the quiet girl in simple clothing. They expected a modest performance, perhaps something passable, but nothing remarkable. Her first note floated into the room. It was soft, almost delicate, but immediately it captured attention. The audience leaned forward unconsciously, drawn in by the purity of the sound. She played the melody she had composed, blending it with rhythms she had learned from recordings, adding little improvisations that made it feel alive. Each note was intentional, each pause filled with emotion. The hall was transformed, filled with music that seemed larger than the room itself. As she played, she felt herself floating, carried by the music. Fear and doubt disappeared, replaced by focus and joy. She could sense the audience's reaction. Some eyes widened in surprise, Some parents whispered to each other, and even the music teachers seemed taken aback. They had seen many talented children before, but the depth and expressiveness of her playing was unusual, even for those with years of formal training. When she finished, there was a brief silence. Then, slowly, the applause began. It started with a few claps, then more people joined in, and soon the entire hall was clapping, cheering, and some even whistling. She smiled shyly, feeling a warmth she had never felt before. People were not just recognizing her skill. They were recognizing the soul she put into every note. She realized that music could break barriers, touch hearts, and make strangers feel connected. Judges and teachers approached her afterward. They asked questions about her practice, her inspirations, and her journey. She explained that she had mostly learned on her own, practicing at the community center and experimenting with melodies she heard. They were amazed. Some even took notes, impressed that someone with no formal training could play with such confidence, creativity, and expression. They encouraged her to continue, offered advice, and suggested opportunities to perform at other events and competitions. Her mother, standing quietly at the back, felt tears prick her eyes. She had watched her daughter grow, face struggles, and nurture her passion without complaint. Now the world seemed to notice too. She hugged her daughter tightly afterward, whispering how proud she was. The girl felt a rush of gratitude and love. She realized that her mother's support had been as important as her own practice. Without the care, encouragement, and sacrifices at home, she might never have had the courage to step onto the stage. Over the next few weeks, invitations began arriving. Local events, small concerts, and community gatherings wanted her to perform. People wanted to see the girl who had captured attention with her music, the one who had made even professional teachers stop and listen. She was nervous but excited. Every time she performed, she reminded herself of why she played, not for fame or recognition, but for the joy and connection that music brought. The girl also began to notice the reactions of others. Some children admired her, asking questions about her techniques, while others seemed envious of the attention she was receiving. She did not let jealousy or competition affect her. Instead, she focused on her music, learning to be gracious, patient, and kind. She understood that talent was something to be shared, not hoarded, and that the more she practiced and performed, the more she could inspire others. During this time, she experimented more with compositions. She tried mixing styles, using classical techniques she had studied with rhythms inspired by songs she loved. She learned that music was not only about following notes but also about expression and creativity. Her audience noticed the difference. Her performances were no longer just skillful. They told stories, painted pictures in the mind, and evoked emotions. One day, a small article appeared in the local newspaper about her. The writer had attended one of her performances at a community event and was impressed by her talent and humble beginnings. They described her as a girl with extraordinary skill and heart, who reminded everyone that greatness could come from anywhere. Her mother cut the article out and pinned it to the kitchen wall, smiling proudly. The girl read it several times, feeling both pride and determination. She knew this was only the beginning. The world was larger than her neighborhood, and there was much more to explore. Despite the growing attention, she stayed grounded. She continued practicing daily, balancing her schoolwork, chores, and music. She learned that consistency and effort mattered as much as raw talent. She also learned patience. Opportunities would come, but she had to be ready and willing to work hard when they did. Every new performance was a chance to improve, to connect, and to grow. She also began to meet other young musicians. Some had the same determination, others had advantages like expensive instruments and formal training. She observed, listened, and learned from them without feeling inferior. She realized that her unique perspective and self-taught style made her stand out. Her music had personality, feeling, and authenticity that could not be replicated. This gave her confidence. She didn't need to copy others. She could create her own path. At home, the evenings remained the same. After her mother returned from work, they would sit together, sharing stories and listening to the melodies she had learned or composed. The apartment, though small, was full of music and warmth. Her mother often reminded her to stay humble and kind, no matter where her talent took her. These lessons stayed with her, shaping not only her music but her character. Through all these experiences, the girl began to understand a deeper truth. Talent might open doors, but passion, perseverance, and heart were what truly made her music special. She had come a long way from the first hesitant notes on a broken keyboard. Now, each performance was a testament to her journey, a story of courage, dedication, and love for music. She had learned that the simplest beginnings could lead to extraordinary outcomes, and that sometimes the most overlooked people carried the most remarkable gifts. By the end of this period, she was no longer just a quiet girl from a modest apartment. She was a young musician beginning to make her mark. Audiences, teachers, and neighbors alike saw not just her skill but her spirit. Her story was slowly spreading beyond her community, and though she remained humble, she understood that her life was changing. The world was noticing her melodies, and she was ready to embrace what came next, prepared to play, to inspire, and to share her music with anyone who would listen. The day of the big event finally arrived. It was a prestigious gathering, a competition where young talents from across the region would perform. The girl's heart raced as she approached the grand hall. The building was magnificent, with chandeliers hanging from the ceiling and polished wooden floors reflecting the soft lights. Parents, teachers, and music enthusiasts filled the seats. Some were dressed in elegant outfits, carrying expensive instruments, while she held only her sheet music and the confidence built from years of practice. She felt a mix of excitement and nerves. This was the moment she had dreamed of for so long, and it terrified her. Her mother held her hand for a moment, whispering encouragement. She reminded her daughter that talent and heart mattered more than appearances, and that she should simply let her music speak. With a deep breath, she stepped onto the stage and approached the piano. The keys gleamed under the lights, and the audience's murmurs quieted. She took a seat and closed her eyes for a brief moment, centering herself. The first note she played was soft, almost shy, but it carried a certain purity that made the room fall silent. The audience leaned forward instinctively, drawn in by the delicate tone. She began to play the melody she had prepared, blending the structure of classical pieces she had studied with the creativity she had developed through years of self-learning. Her fingers danced on the keys, producing a sound that was both precise and full of emotion. At first, some people seemed skeptical. The girl was small and unassuming, and her simple clothing contrasted sharply with the polished appearances of other competitors. But as the notes continued, all doubt disappeared. The music grew in richness and complexity, flowing naturally, carrying feeling and life. Every pause, every touch of the keys told a story. Some audience members closed their eyes, letting the melody take them somewhere far away. Teachers and judges watched in astonishment, whispering to one another, unable to believe that such a performance could come from someone so young and with no formal training. Her confidence grew as she played. She no longer noticed the audience, the lights, or the grandeur of the hall. All that existed was the music and the emotions she poured into it. Each note seemed to stretch and breathe, filling the space with a presence that went beyond sound. The room vibrated with energy, as if everyone there was connected by the music. By the time she reached the climax of the piece, the audience was completely captivated. Some were holding their breath, absorbed by the emotion and skill of her performance. She added little improvisations she had practiced in secret, subtle touches that made the music unique to her. Every person in the room could feel her dedication and love for the art. Her fingers moved with precision, but more importantly, with passion. She had transformed nerves and excitement into music that spoke directly to the hearts of those listening. When the final note lingered and faded into silence, the room was still for a moment. Then slowly applause began. It grew louder and louder until it filled every corner of the hall. People were on their feet, cheering, clapping, some even wiping away tears. The girl felt a warmth in her chest, a mixture of relief, pride, and joy. She had shared a piece of herself and the world had noticed. She looked up briefly and saw the astonished faces of famous musicians in the audience, some nodding in approval, some leaning forward, eager to meet her after the performance. Judges and teachers approached her immediately after she finished. They asked how she had learned, what inspired her, and where she had practiced. She explained her journey, the community center, the small keyboard, and the long hours of self-learning. They were amazed. Some took notes, some whispered to each other, and a few smiled broadly, impressed by her talent and story. They encouraged her to pursue further opportunities and offered advice on how to continue developing her skill. Her mother, standing in the back, felt tears streaming down her face. She had seen her daughter grow, struggle, and practice in silence. Now the world was seeing the beauty and power of her music. She hugged her daughter tightly afterward, feeling immense pride and gratitude. The girl realized that her mother's unwavering support had been as important as her own dedication. It was not just talent alone that had brought her here, but love, encouragement, and patience. Word about her performance spread quickly. People began to recognize the young girl with extraordinary skill and heart. Invitations came from other music events, local concerts, and even small competitions. She was being asked to perform in places she had only imagined in her dreams. Each opportunity was both exciting and nerve-wracking, but she remembered the lessons she had learned. Stay humble, stay focused, and let music lead the way. At home, evenings were spent practicing new pieces, composing melodies, and imagining future performances. She experimented with combining styles, creating music that told stories and expressed emotion in ways others might not have expected. Her audience might grow in size and stature, but her connection to the music remained personal and genuine. Music had become more than just notes on a page. It was a way to share feelings, connect with others, and find her own voice in a world that often overlooked her. She also learned the importance of discipline and patience. Fame or recognition was not immediate. She had to continue working hard, practicing, and performing with sincerity. Every new stage, every new audience was a chance to learn, to improve, and to share. She discovered that true artistry came not only from skill but from heart, and that connection with an audience mattered as much as technical perfection. Meeting other young musicians at events also became part of her journey. Some had formal training, advanced instruments, and opportunities she had never had. Instead of feeling inferior, she observed, learned, and adapted. She discovered that her individuality and self-taught style made her stand out. Her music had personality and authenticity that no one could replicate. This realization boosted her confidence and inspired her to keep pushing forward. Through all these experiences, she remained grounded. She continued to practice at the community center, helping neighbors, and keeping her humble apartment as a reminder of where she came from. Her mother's guidance and the small joys of home life kept her focused and compassionate. Even as recognition grew, she never let it change the way she approached music or life. She remained kind, patient, and dedicated, qualities that made her not only a remarkable musician but also a remarkable person. By the end of this period, she had achieved a milestone she had once only dreamed about. The performance at the prestigious hall had changed her life, opening doors and capturing the attention of musicians and audiences alike. She had faced fear, uncertainty, and self-doubt, and had transformed them into music that inspired and moved people. The girl from the humble apartment, the daughter of a cleaner, had taken her place on a stage where her talent could shine, and she had proven that heart and determination could surpass obstacles, appearances, and expectations. Her story was beginning to spread beyond her community. People were talking about the quiet girl who played the piano with soul and precision. Even in her simple dress and modest background, she had captivated an audience of strangers, leaving them wanting more. She understood then that music was more than a skill. It was a bridge, a way to reach people across differences, to inspire and connect. Every note she played carried a piece of her journey, her struggles, her dreams, and her unwavering love for the art. She was ready for whatever came next, knowing that her passion, dedication, and heart would guide her to new heights. After her stunning performance at the prestigious hall, the girl's life began to change in ways she had never imagined. Invitations poured in from local concerts, charity events, and community gatherings. People were eager to hear the girl whose piano melodies had captured hearts and silenced skeptics. Each invitation was a mixture of excitement and nervousness. She had never traveled far from her small apartment, but she was determined to seize every opportunity. Her mother supported her, helping her manage schedules and encouraging her to stay grounded despite the growing attention. At the first few events, she felt a mixture of fear and exhilaration. The audiences were larger, the stages brighter, and the pressure greater. But with every performance, she became more confident. She noticed that no matter where she played, her music had a universal effect. People from all walks of life could feel the emotion in her melodies. Some would close their eyes, letting the sound carry them, while others would nod or tap along, moved by the rhythm. She realized that music was a language everyone could understand, transcending differences and creating connection. She also began to meet other musicians, both young and experienced. Some were formally trained with years of practice and expensive instruments, while others were self-taught like her. She listened carefully, observing their techniques, learning from their successes and mistakes. She shared her own insights, understanding that collaboration and learning from others was part of growing as an artist. Her humility and willingness to learn earned her respect from peers and mentors alike. Even as her recognition grew, she stayed true to her roots. She continued to practice at the community center, using the old piano that had started it all. She remembered the hours spent on that instrument, the first notes she had learned, and the joy she had felt when creating her own melodies. Those memories grounded her, reminding her that her journey was built on dedication, love, and patience. Fame and applause were gratifying, but the music itself was always the reason she played. She began experimenting with more complex compositions, blending classical techniques with modern rhythms she had discovered through recordings. Each piece was a reflection of her creativity and emotion. Sometimes, she would stay up late, composing melodies that captured the feeling of the city at night, the struggles of her family, or the hope she felt for the future. Music became a diary, a way to process her experiences and express herself beyond words. With each performance, she learned to communicate with her audience in a deeper way. She observed their reactions, noticing how certain notes made people smile, pause, or even shed tears. She began to understand that performance was not just about skill, but about connecting with others. Her music told stories, shared emotions, and created moments of shared humanity. This understanding deepened her artistry and made her performances even more moving. As invitations expanded beyond her neighborhood, she traveled to nearby towns and cities. She saw places she had never imagined visiting, met people who were passionate about music, and experienced audiences that reacted to her melodies in unexpected ways. Each trip was a learning experience, teaching her how to adapt to new stages, instruments, and acoustics. She became more versatile, able to adjust her playing to bring out the best sound in every environment. Her mother remained a constant presence, supporting her emotionally and practically. She encouraged her daughter to rest, to eat, and to remember the values that had shaped her. She reminded her that success was not measured only by applause or recognition, but by the joy and integrity she brought to her music. The girl listened carefully, knowing that her mother's wisdom was as valuable as any lesson learned on the piano. The girl also became a source of inspiration for others. Children in her community began taking an interest in music, motivated by her dedication and talent. Some had never thought they could play an instrument, but watching her showed them that with practice and passion, it was possible. She occasionally gave informal lessons or shared tips, feeling proud that she could encourage others to explore their own creativity. She realized that part of her journey was not only personal success, but also helping others find their voices through music. Over time, her story caught the attention of local newspapers and social media. Articles highlighted her humble beginnings, her self-taught skills, and the heartfelt performances that had made her famous in her community. People were amazed that the daughter of a cleaner could rise to such recognition through dedication, talent, and passion alone. Her story inspired countless others, showing that obstacles and humble beginnings did not have to limit dreams. Despite the growing attention, she remained grounded and focused. She continued her daily practice, balancing schoolwork, family responsibilities, and performances. She understood that talent without effort would not last, and that consistency was key to growth. She also learned to manage nerves, turning anxiety before a performance into energy that fueled her music. Each challenge became an opportunity to learn and improve. She also began to form meaningful connections with experienced musicians. Some offered mentorship, guiding her in areas such as technique, composition, and stage presence. Others shared stories of their own struggles and triumphs, helping her navigate the complexities of recognition and opportunity. She absorbed these lessons eagerly, knowing that her journey was just beginning, and that every experience could contribute to her growth. Her music evolved as well. She started to compose longer, more intricate pieces that reflected her experiences, dreams, and emotions. Each composition was a reflection of her unique perspective, blending her self-taught creativity with new techniques she had learned from mentors and observation. Her performances became more dynamic, telling stories and evoking a range of emotions in her audience. She realized that music could capture the complexities of life, and she wanted to share that with everyone who listened. Through it all, she remained humble and compassionate. She never forgot the small apartment, the community center, and the old keyboard that had started her journey. She understood that her success was built on those early experiences, the support of her mother, and the countless hours of practice and dedication. She carried these lessons with her, ensuring that her heart remained as strong as her talent. By the end of this period, she had achieved remarkable recognition. Her talent had captured the attention of not just her community, but also of musicians and audiences beyond. She had proven that dedication, passion, and heart could overcome obstacles and open doors. Yet she continued to practice, create, and perform with humility and joy. The girl from a humble background had begun to make a name for herself, and the world was listening. Her journey was far from over, but she was ready for every stage, every audience, and every note that lay ahead, knowing that her music was her voice and her gift to share. The final part of her journey was unlike anything she had experienced before. Invitations arrived from larger venues, including prestigious concert halls in nearby cities. This was her chance to perform for a wider audience and to show not just her skill but her heart and passion. She felt a mixture of excitement, nerves, and gratitude. Her mother reminded her to stay humble and to remember that music was always about connection and emotion. With that advice, she prepared for what would become one of the most defining moments of her young life. The day of the major concert arrived, and she entered a hall that seemed almost magical. The lights were bright, the seats were filled with people, and the stage was larger than any she had performed on before. She looked out at the audience, feeling both awe and determination. Among the crowd were not only local fans but also famous musicians, composers, and critics who had heard of the girl from a small apartment whose music had begun to capture hearts. For the first time, she felt the weight of expectations. But she reminded herself of all the practice, all the small moments at the community center, and all the joy she found in music itself. As she sat at the piano, she took a deep breath. The first note sounded soft and tentative, but then, like a spark igniting, the melody grew. Her fingers moved with precision, confidence, and emotion. Every note told a story, reflecting the struggles she had faced, the dreams she had nurtured, and the hope she carried. The audience was immediately captivated. Some closed their eyes, letting the music wash over them, while others leaned forward, mesmerized by the combination of skill and feeling. She could sense that this performance was different. It was not just a recital, but a connection with everyone present. Throughout the piece, she added subtle improvisations, weaving her creativity into the structure she had prepared. The music ebbed and flowed, sometimes soft and reflective, sometimes bold and energetic. Each phrase was intentional, carrying the listener through her journey. The audience responded instinctively, gasping in awe, smiling, and even shedding tears. The girl felt herself in a flow she had never known before, where fear and doubt melted away and only the music remained. It was as if she and the piano were one, expressing what words could never convey. When the final note lingered and faded, the hall was silent for a heartbeat. Then, as if released from a spell, the audience erupted in applause. The sound was overwhelming, yet comforting. People were on their feet, clapping, cheering, and some were even moved to tears. The girl felt a rush of emotions: relief, pride, joy, and gratitude. She had shared herself through music, and the world had listened. She had transformed nerves, uncertainty, and years of practice into something tangible, something that touched the hearts of strangers. After the performance, famous musicians approached her, eager to speak, to learn her story, and to offer guidance. They were impressed not just by her skill, but by the emotion and authenticity she brought to every note. She shared how she had learned on her own, practiced in a small community center, and nurtured her love for music despite challenges. Their admiration and encouragement filled her with hope and excitement for the future. They invited her to collaborate, to perform in other venues, and to continue developing her talent with their mentorship. Her mother stood quietly at the back, tears streaming down her face. She had watched her daughter grow from a quiet, curious girl into a confident, inspiring young musician. All the hours of support, encouragement, and sacrifice had culminated in this moment. The girl hugged her mother tightly, feeling gratitude for the love and guidance that had always been her foundation. She realized that success was not just about recognition, but about sharing her gift and honoring the people who had helped her along the way. In the following months, her journey continued to expand. She traveled to different cities, performing for diverse audiences. Each new stage brought its own challenges, from different pianos to acoustics and audience expectations, but she adapted with grace. She learned to communicate not only through music but through presence and expression, understanding that every performance was a story and every audience a partner in her art. Her compositions evolved as well. She blended classical techniques with rhythms and harmonies she had learned from recordings and mentors. Her music began to reflect her experiences more deeply: her childhood, her struggles, her victories, and her dreams. People remarked on the uniqueness and emotional power of her performances. They recognized that she was not only technically skilled but also an artist who could move hearts. The girl also became a source of inspiration for many. Young musicians, particularly those from humble backgrounds, looked to her as proof that talent, hard work, and passion could overcome obstacles. She occasionally held workshops, shared tips, and encouraged others to pursue their own paths in music. She understood that part of her responsibility as a musician was to inspire and support others. By giving back, she found even greater fulfillment in her journey. Despite the increasing attention, she stayed grounded. She continued her daily practice, composing new pieces, and finding moments of quiet reflection. She never forgot the small apartment, the community center, and the first broken keyboard that had sparked her love for music. These memories reminded her of the importance of humility, dedication, and authenticity. She realized that the journey mattered as much as the destination, and that every note played was a testament to perseverance and heart. Her story spread beyond the music community. Articles, interviews, and online features highlighted her extraordinary journey, from a cleaner's daughter to a musician admired by professionals and audiences alike. People were inspired by her talent, determination, and humble beginnings. She became a symbol of hope, showing that circumstances did not define potential, and that passion could open doors that seemed impossible. With each performance, she learned more about herself. She discovered that music was not just an expression of skill but a reflection of identity. It was a way to communicate, to heal, and to connect. Every audience, every stage, and every note added to her understanding of who she was as an artist and as a person. She embraced challenges, knowing that growth came from pushing boundaries and exploring new possibilities. In quiet moments, she reflected on her journey. From the first notes she had played in a small apartment to the grand stages she now performed on, the path had been long and sometimes difficult. But every challenge had strengthened her, every small victory had motivated her, and every moment of doubt had taught her resilience. She had learned to transform fear into energy, obstacles into opportunity, and passion into artistry. Her mother remained her anchor throughout. She celebrated every milestone, offered comfort during moments of self-doubt, and reminded her of the values that had guided them both. The girl understood that her achievements were not hers alone. They were built on love, support, and shared sacrifices. She carried that understanding into every performance, every composition, and every interaction, ensuring that gratitude remained at the core of her success. By the end of this period, the girl had achieved recognition beyond what she had imagined as a child. She had performed for renowned musicians, captivated large audiences, and inspired countless young artists. Yet she remained humble, focused, and passionate, understanding that music was a lifelong journey, not a destination. Every note she played carried a piece of her heart, her story, and her dreams. Her life had changed, but she had not forgotten her beginnings. The small apartment, the community center, the first broken keyboard, and her mother's guidance were threads woven into the fabric of her artistry. They reminded her that true success was not measured solely by fame or applause, but by the ability to touch lives, share beauty, and remain true to oneself. As she prepared for the next performance, she felt a sense of calm excitement. The stage awaited, and with it, another opportunity to share her music, connect with her audience, and continue her journey. She knew that the road ahead would bring challenges, surprises, and growth. But she also knew that with talent, dedication, heart, and support, she could face anything. The cleaner's daughter had become more than a young musician. She had become a symbol of perseverance, inspiration, and the power of following one's passion. Her piano melodies had reached beyond her small beginnings, captivating famous artists and audiences alike. And as she played each note, she knew that her journey was only beginning, carrying with her the lessons, love, and dreams that had brought her to this extraordinary moment.